Well, good morning, everybody, or good evening if you're in Australia, or good middle of the night if you're in America, or early hours of the morning, wherever. It's so wonderful to have this international platform. No matter what time of the day or night it is, there's always someone out there, right? So, welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa, focus on Australia. And I have with me really one of my favorite people, Ash, who's been on our channel before with some horror stories, to the point that we kind of needed to remove his previous recordings from YouTube. They have been on ODYSEE, BitChute, and Rumble. They still are on there. But what we're going to be doing today, I still think, Morné, I'm not sure, but if not today, then in the next day or two, we will be reloading Ash's previous 3 interviews with us here on Aquarius Rising Africa. So you can get to really understand his background, what he experienced. What we are going to be about is the Australian system, because Ash has a lot of information and knowledge on that, as well as his experiences kind of into that. But I know that you guys are not here to hear from me, although you know I like the sound of my own voice by now, right? So without any further ado, welcome, beautiful Ash. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's late at night there already. So welcome to Aquarius Rising Africa again. So happy to have you back. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. It's not that late. It's only 7:11, which is actually a store down here where people go to get their meat pies and their sausage rolls and stuff like that. So it's the perfect time of night.
7-Eleven. We also have it here, actually. Exactly.
Oh, dear, nice.
Open from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. Very cool. Wonderful. So welcome back, man. How's it been going with you?
It's been very challenging. It's been tough. Life as a whistleblower has its challenges and its difficulties. But as always, I'm staying strong and staying positive, and always got a smile on my face. And life is an incredible gift and a joy, which I'm still so blessed to be here and enjoying every day.
Well, one thing that you certainly do know is how to enjoy life. That's for sure. I follow you on Facebook and I see your shenanigans and the way you enjoy life, which is beautiful. And I have to say, so often I take a moment or 10 or 20 or 50 during the day, and I just have to say, and I say this so much on this channel, and I'll probably say it until I die. I have so much respect for people like yourself, and by that I mean the survivors and the overcomers, because I've been working with a number of survivors in the time that we've started this channel as a healer, and it's astounding to me that a child can go through what you guys have been through, and you come out and you still have this incredible zest for life and the desire to help others. It's truly a healer spirit, that. And I love that. And I think this is one of the main reasons why we do what we do. And, you know, to meet people like who are fearlessly, and I know you're under a lot of attack a lot of the time. We speak about that sometimes. But yeah. I would love to hear from you, maybe explaining to us more about how the system in Australia itself, because, you know, with Jesse Zabota, we understand a lot about the system in America, or the system, I know how it all fits in with Australia as well. Having had Fiona Barnett on our show as well, and chatted with her a few times, understanding a lot about the system in Australia as well. And it's a monster on its own, isn't it? It's kind of taken on a life of its own, because as far as I know, Tavistock mind control is actually, the head of it is the head of the snake, so to speak, is in Australia. And a lot of secretly, that is, and I know just from chatting with our previous guests as well, horrors have occurred there in these places. So more from you on that, please.
Absolutely. Australia has essentially been a testing ground for a lot of illegal research, illegal medical research, illegal weapons testing, and a lot of that illegal, obviously, MK Ultra testing. A lot of this testing is done on children. And we do know that before the age of 5, this is a critical period of time in human development and in a child's development and the development of the human brain. And so a lot of the research and testing that is done on children is done prior to the age of 5, at that critical age, to create assets, to create, I guess, jobs for these kids that they can do. And so I was a part of that, unfortunately. And I spoke about that in one of my...
Hang on. When you say jobs, help me understand. Let's just define jobs. Are you saying that they, in their minds, are creating these super-powered kids on whichever way, because we know that they will tap into the kids' spiritual gifts and they amplify those. So they're creating super-powered gifts, or they're amplifying these gifts in these kids so that they have a job in future?
Not with all children, but with some children. And they will test a child's aptitude. They will do a range of testing. They will try to map as much of the human brain as they possibly can, test that child's personality, and work out the areas and skills that they can amplify, that they can train to be of use to them. If that child has a specific bloodline and is a monarch, as was the case in my case, because I'm a monarch. So we're the lucky kids that get to be kept alive.
Define a monarch. Would that be the same as a hierarchy kid that, like Jesse talks about? So it's the kids with the bloodlines, and it's
Correct.
the kids with the spiritual gifts, basically. And then those
Correct.
are the kids that they would then use to be their future assets, really.
Correct. Yes. So I went through training. This, I guess, it's quite sad. And a lot of testing that was done on me was done in, military. It was really conducted illegally by private military companies and by an illegal faction of the military. And a lot of this testing was done. Sorry.
And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't want to do that, and I don't want to get you off the flow. But how old were you when you were put into this military testing program? And who decided that you should go in?
I don't believe that I will ever know for sure. But every child that is entered into child trafficking, and every monarch has a contract, and everything is always contracted. So depending on the stipulations of that contract, and who that's set up by, will determine the life of a child and what they go through. And in my case, all I know for sure is that my father entered me with this contract into child trafficking. That's all I know. And I'm sorry that I can't detail it more. I was so young when my training began, and I apologize that I can't detail more. That's the best that I can do, and I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. I so appreciate that. I mean, I think, we've spoken to quite a few people, and as you say, for someone who's not been involved in this, it's such a foreign concept to think that your father would do that to you and that your mother willingly complies. I mean, I've got a mother who's a Leo, okay, and she has 6 kids, and I want to tell you, she would fight like a wild lioness to protect us. And I mean, she could slap us about the ears, make no mistake. But nobody else. So it's quite a foreign concept for, I think, the average person to understand that. But I think what I've heard, and what I'd just like to say to our viewers here as well, especially the newer viewers, is that these people are really Luciferians, and they generally have some kind of a very bad personality disorder. They're generally a psychopath of sorts, or I can't, I'm not the expert on that, but this is what obviously the feedback I'm getting over and over again.
Yeah.
They are not really even inhabited often by a human spirit. It's generally something that they've often sold, because that's what they do. They sell their souls for fame and fortune and do whatever. And then there's often these really shitty entities that take control, and they make them do things that are kind of inhumane. And part of that contract is, in the Luciferian system, is that often the first child is required as a sacrifice, right? Did you, so, and then these kids are born for the system. So the mom is really just the incubator. There's no emotional connection there whatsoever. There's no love. I mean, often the moms are tortured because the baby already from in the womb has to feel pain, because that's all they know. Pain is what they know. So these kids are then by contract sold into the system. There's no love. There's no, wow, that's a little mini me. There's no nurturing. It's the opposite of what we know. We want to create. They want to destroy, right?
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. And in my instance, I did have a mum that loved me, that cared about me, but she was very unaware of a lot of things that happened, and she dissociated from a lot of what happened as well. So she didn't know that I was being trafficked, and she really turned a blind eye to a lot of the abuse that I was going through at home. But we know, as part of the MK Ultra handbook, that, you know, part of being entered into an MK Ultra program, which now is only referred to as Ultra programming, that trauma is required, and trauma creates dissociation, and trauma is a huge part. Creating terror and destroying that spirit and destroying that light is a crucial part of creating assets for the network, sadly. And you know what really makes us human is that beautiful, incredible light inside of us. And it's even spoken about in the MK Ultra handbook. In their training, they always talk about that inner light that we all have, that makes us unique, that makes us human, that makes us beautiful. And I think I'm very blessed, and I'm very lucky in the sense that that light for me was not put out. And so that's something that I've always held to, no matter what I've been through. And I'm very incredibly blessed, and I'm very lucky that I was able to hold to that through everything that I experienced. But going back to these programs that children are entered into, there is there's countless jobs. There is countless reasons why a child will be entered into this. It is the Luciferian system, but I can't detail every single job, right? But in my personal case, because my father is a sexually sadistic serial killer, he's a psychopath, he's a pedophile, and he enjoys killing for pleasure, which is very sad. And I detailed that in some of my previous videos.
What's his cover line? I want to can you just tell us now, guys, this to me is a shocker, because this is what's happening behind the scenes, and the cover life is
a lawyer who is, human rights is his passion.
A human rights lawyer, right? So I want to just highlight this, because so many people, when we're dealing with these politicians that look like sugar wouldn't melt in their freaking mouth, right? We have to understand that this is what they're doing behind the scenes. I'm not saying all of it, but I'm telling you that's what they do behind the scenes. Maybe not exactly in the same way, or with the same lust or whatever, but that is what life is behind the scenes in the system. Sorry, Ash, I just had to bring that up.
No, that's fine. And I wouldn't really call it behind the scenes. I would call it in front of the scenes. This is the cover. And the cover is very, very critical and important in terms of, it depends where the person is within the network and within the hierarchy. Obviously, the lower down you go, the less that it matters. And we know that they, operate within a lot of criminal networks, and bargain basement criminals, as I like to call them, no offense to them. But as we move further and further up the hierarchy, they have these roles and they have these jobs, and they're put in elevated to positions of power. In my father's case, that wasn't necessarily what happened. I've detailed that in previous videos about his journey, and he's gotten into trouble too many times in his employment. to really be given a specific job. But now he's, you know, working in a government position, a very fairly high profile government position, and yes, in the area of law and mediation. So, and he contributes to important decisions that affect Australian citizens. Not that we want that, but it just is the way that it is. But in regards to, you know, what he is and is as a person, I fundamentally believe that my father was, you know, born a psychopath. He was born without a light within him. And as a direct result of that, it's really important to understand. I think people will think to themselves, how could there possibly be a connected network of evil psychopaths that are running rampant, that are doing things behind the scenes? And it's been labeled, you know, a quote unquote conspiracy. But what people really need to understand is the nature of psychopathy. Psychopaths can't feel happiness. They can't feel peace. We're going about our daily lives. We're walking in nature. We're spending time with our family. We're falling in love. We are getting this immense satisfaction from our lives that none of these psychopaths are. They're not getting any satisfaction at all. They look at human beings and they're wildly jealous of us, and they despise and hate us. And it comes from a deep feeling of inferiority and jealousy for us. So what do? All they need is control and power and money and lust, and to fulfill their sexual needs, and all of these other egotistical desires, which don't actually motivate us as human beings, are the only things that motivate them. And so that's how this part of this connected network, they tap into that and they build on that, because they don't experience satisfaction in life. So why not be part of this, you know, secret society, which I say it like this because I just take the piss out of it. It's nothing to be respected. It's not secretive, whatever. You know, they're just wankers at the end of the day. Sorry to use an Australian rude term, but whatever. You're not special.
I love it, wankers, they are.
So, you know, this is just what happens. It's what exists. And I think for children like me, because of my father's predisposition, what he enjoys doing, they believe that they could train me as a serial killer. And part of that training was MK Ultra training, which involved terrorizing. It involves drugs, terror, and then coming in as a savior and trying to implant that new asset-driven role within that child, which was me. And that was that killer instinct. And they tried very, very hard to do that, and they were unsuccessful. Because for me, my morals and ethics would not allow it, even at such a critical and young age. I always, from a very young age, even I recall being 2 years of age and being so ethical and moral that I was just opposed.
May I ask you, and obviously you know that at any point you can say, no, Chantelle, you're being nosy, and I will try and manipulate you.
Good luck with that after everything that I've been through.
I know, you probably had the best.
Very charming.
Oh, you're so awesome. You got to come and visit us, Yash. Anyway, so when you say they try to, your training was to become that of a serial killer, and I want to just as well say this. I know from just previous interviews with other Australian guys, they are on our channel, not Daniel, Stephen, I think, Stephen Master, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was him. Also, boys going into the boys' home because their parents or whatever in Australia, it didn't seem there had to be a great reason to take a kid away from their parents, because obviously now we understand why. Put into these boys' homes and trafficked and mind controlled. And Ivan Milat, which I know is that prolific Australian serial killer, was with him. And they pretty much MK Ultra that Ivan Milat to become a serial killer. Now, that is very scary. And I know, Stephen, I've got to get the right name. Sorry, guys, I've interviewed a few Australians, and just off the top of my head now, I'm a bit confused. But he particularly spoke, I don't know, Morné, if you can remember, if you can put it in the chat who it was, I'm not sure, the one particular guy that we had him on twice. And he was also just saying, and he was also being controlled to do certain things. And the one day his phone rings and he answers, so the guy says, "Yellow pussycat," or whatever. And he goes, "What the fuck are you talking about?" And then he realized, because that was the handler obviously giving code words that would have then put him into his alternative mindset. And this is what happens, guys.
Right.
They control them, that they get up and suddenly they give them psychohypnosis. They tell them to do something and suddenly they go off and do these crazy things. The next morning, they have no idea what they've done. And I do believe that's the situation with a lot of our celebrities as well, by the way. So we think these celebrities are so aware of what's going on behind the scenes. I think a lot of the times they're actually not. That's just my opinion. Anyway, so sorry, Ash, about the whole, that dissociative thing. Yeah.
I think to expand more on what you just said, I don't have any firsthand experience dealing with quote unquote American celebrities. So I don't know what they're going through, and I have my suspicions, but I'm not going to comment on that. But if we look at the programming, and I think that that's what I'd like to talk about today. Because I don't have first-hand experience, I'm not going to comment, but I will comment on my personal experience, and I think it would hopefully shine a light on potentially what other people are going through, like what you've just spoken about. So, yes, we have like the beta programming to create trafficking, sex kittens, and we've got a number of different programs which have been laid out in documents that have been released, and some of them have been redacted by the CIA. But it's just, at the end of the day, MK Ultra training, and each child is trained in for a certain role that they show aptitude in. And in my case, as I said, my father was and is a sexually sadistic psychopath that's never been caught. He's been killing between 2 to 5 people a year, and that's innocent citizens out in the community. And nothing's been done about it. But anyway, so they thought that they could do that with me, and they tried very hard, but ultimately they failed. And they ran us through a number of different tests: pain testing, pain tolerance, enduring some of the most horrific pain you can possibly go through, such as being electrocuted, pinning, electrocuting us via the nipples, electrocuting us through the anus, which is one of the most painful things that a human being can possibly go through, might I add. Of course, being on fire is not so good either. But, it's up there. And, what this is where they are developing the abilities that are kind of like beyond what we feel that a human being can possibly handle. But a human being can handle so much more than what we've been taught and socialized and understand within our society, because like the average person doesn't go through this shit, and we did. And I think that it really creates kind of the ability to go to a different place within our mind where we can endure nearly any pain. We can have an exceptional pain tolerance. We can read situations in ways that other people can't. And look, I'm being vague here, so I'm going to get back to specifics. So they tried to train me as a killer. They thought that I would be a great killer. That failed. And what ended up happening is I kept turning back on my handlers. They would direct me towards animals. They would direct me towards other children. And they felt that through this training, which was predominantly electrocution, pain, drugging, and then coming in as a savior and directing that energy towards another, living being that I would attack. And what ended up happening is I went into the state of that, attacker, but I ended up turning back on my adult handlers, and I actually ended up biting and I guess sadistically attacking, you could say, one of my handlers very, very badly. And after that, they just had enough. It happened 3 times, and they said, we're done. We're not interested in doing that anymore. We're going to use this kid for a different purpose. So
I love it. It's like that. This one won't comply.
Pretty much. They're like, we can't be bothered. Look, I think, look, they potentially could have made me comply if they spent months, more years. who knows? Because we know that MK Ultra is very, very successful in working. But with me, they couldn't be bloody bothered. I showed aptitude in other areas, and those areas were obviously emotional intelligence. Sorry, I shouldn't have said obviously. That was very rude of me.
I think it's obvious.
As an extrovert, yes, talking with people and like getting along with people and getting information out of people. And so for somebody in that kind of role that shows aptitude in that kind of role, this is something that they're going to make use of by sending that child into specific situations, and in particular, in my case, situations with politicians. And I detailed in one of my previous interviews a specific party that I went to involving politicians. But I went to several very high-profile politicians.
Are you prepared to name drop for us on these politicians? I know I'm treading on thin ice. Yes, I'm treading on thin ice.
You're not treading on thin ice, not at all. I'm an open book. You can ask me anything. I will say that I was raped and abused by some of the same people that Fiona Barnett was raped and abused by, and I can confirm some of her names. But I will wait till our next interview to release those names, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
The names that I'm going to release, I will detail the reasons how I met them now, and then I will release them later. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I went through this training, and I developed the emotional intelligence to, what I learned was to read people. And I detailed this previously. So depending on the way a person dresses, the way the person walks, I can determine key things about a person. And within a period of, say, 45 seconds, I can observe somebody walking for 100 meters, and I can determine key facets of their personality, their loyalty, their strength of will, their ethics, their character. It's a unique ability that I've got. It doesn't come in handy all the time, but it's handy if I need to make a quick observation or if I'm in an emergency situation. That's the other thing that because I was trained, and I flipped really this training that I was trained in, this killer training, to essentially handle any pain, any situation that I was put through in a dissociative state. And what I really did was developed a mindfulness within that state as I went on, and kind of twisted that training for myself to make it ethical and moral. And part of that was to handle any emergency with complete calm. So, for example, just the other day, I was actually, it was last week, I was walking through South Bank Parklands, which is in Brisbane, just chilling out. And a group of kids approached me, and they looked really worried. And I was like, is everything okay? And they said, there's a woman in there, just over there, and she's been screaming out for help. A bloke's put his hands on her. And I said, yep, no worries, I'll handle it. So I went in and handled it. And, look, let's be honest, I'm not a big bloke. I've had all my biceps burnt off. And I'm not really going in as a physically imposing person. But the way that I conduct myself, the way that I carry myself, I feel very adept at handling any situation, particularly dealing with psychopaths, narcissists, sexual offenders, domestic violence offenders, and pedophiles. Any kind of person doesn't bother me. I handled it, I sorted it, and it was all good. A medical emergency, I would remain completely calm. So that's just the skill set that I developed from that training. I'm very blessed and lucky that I've got that skill set, and it's carried me through life. But back to what I went through. A lot of this training, there's some crazy training that we went through. Military training with kids. I remember one such occasion where this was later on as a 9-year-old, put into a military style camp. And what we had to do was we had to run through a series of obstacles as we were getting shot at. So, we had to use all of our wits. We had to develop those skills very quickly.
With live ammunition.
Yes, correct. To be aware of our surroundings.
9-year-old kids.
Yes, correct. as fast as we possibly could to get through this situation with our lives. And children lost their lives. And that was a test for monarchs, you know, to see which of us would survive. I mean, they were having fun, but they were also testing us. They were researching, they were collecting data. And to be clear, a lot of these programs, database, it's all data that goes into programs for the military that they use on adults to go to battle, to go for warfare, and to also train kids for specific roles and specific jobs. What those jobs are, I can't say for sure because I wasn't involved in them. I was just involved in the information gathering and the, you know, trafficking side of things predominantly. But, you know, there was also training for hunting parties. It had multiple uses, and I was involved in hunting parties as well, involving Australian politicians, one of whom is still in Parliament today. And I've been sent personal threats by him within the last year from the team that have been targeting me to not release his name. And to be clear, I will be releasing his name because he sent me that threat and he threatened to kill me. So that's his own fault, as far as I'm concerned. And I do want to put it out there to the network. I'm not aggressive here or angry, but I am going to make it very, very clear that if you send me a threat to not name your name, that's just going to result in you being named. And that was a mistake. So if you'd come to me and you had apologized and been a grown adult and acted with morals and ethics, you know, may have been different, may not. But don't send me a threat because it's not going to end well. So, you know, it may result in a retirement. It may not. We'll see. But that's a moral and ethical thing for me. That's a moral and ethical thing. Yes. So next interview, let's do it.
Oh, we're doing it. Hang in there, guys. So just a question here from Lisa. This happened in which state of Australia? Can you tell us that?
Yes. So the military-based training happened in just outside of Canberra.
Okay. Wow. Just got another question here. Is the full dissociative altered memory loss being multiple only happening through SRA and that kind of stuff? A German trauma specialized in DRD says yes. So I don't know.
A great question. I mean, I probably can't answer that for sure. I do know that people have it's not always just ritual-based abuse. If you've got very extreme pain and suffering, sadistic, I would say the biggest feature is sadistic sexual abuse before the age of 5, in my opinion. I'm not a specialist, that's just my opinion, will lead to the development of DID. And it's not strictly ritual abuse. It can be sadistic sexual abuse just in the own home involving family. That's just my opinion.
There's a lot of the family stuff going on as well. Yeah.
Correct.
Tell us about, I mean, you know, we hear a lot about these hunting parties. And I know in previous interview, we did speak about the specific party you went to, and that's in the previous interviews. We're not going to go into that now. The viewers can see it there. That's what I'm saying. When we talk, it's just such a horrible thing. I mean, oh my gosh, I've obviously heard a lot of people who've been involved. I've spoken to certain people who've been part of these hunting parties with these kids. Can you explain what you experienced in these hunting parties?
Yeah.
And where was it? Where was it?
2 hours outside of Canberra. And I can't tell you the specific location because I don't know. We were all black bagged before we went. So I say black bagged, I just mean a black bag was put over our heads. And I don't know the specific location. Canberra was the last identifiable location. And I would say it was roughly 2 hours that I spent in the car driving to this location. That's all I can give, and I apologize.
So what did you experience there?
Well, the children are released, and
how many?
In this case, it was 30-something. This one particular
Ages?
party that I'm ages. well, this particular one that I'm thinking of, I was 9 years of age.
And the other kids that were involved?
Some of them were younger. Not many were older. You know, some of them were as young as 8. Yeah. And we were kept, so we were put in cages, kept in cages. And one of the things that they had was a dangling foot. It was a live, not live, it wasn't live, sorry. It was a real live severed foot that was in the cage. And we were demeaned and essentially treated as though we were animals. And the point was pure, you know, degradation and dehumanization before we were released. And being a monarch, it was really part of my job to try to help, you know, as many kids as possible keep their lives. And, you know, it's all a trap. It's all a trick. You know, there's so much pressure that is put on you as a monarch that you need to save these kids. You need to save their lives, and you're responsible for them. And every child that's caught, that's on you. And I believed it. You know, I believed it on one hand, but on the other hand, I knew that it was bullshit. But, you know, I just wanted to get as many kids to safety as possible.
Certain kids are marked to
Correct.
not be killed, and
Correct.
then there would be those that are then the expendables. So I guess that would then have been decided beforehand, right?
Correct. Yes.
So you couldn't have saved them anyway, right?
Exactly. It's just a bullshit story that I was told, and it was all part of their sick game for fun. And I think people can't really imagine that anybody would do this for fun. Who would do such a thing for fun? But that's part of our training as well. You know, running, sprinting as silently as we possibly can through the forest. I did a lot of that as a child. I did a lot of running growing up. I loved cross country, obviously. I really enjoyed cross country. It was, you know, a freeing and liberating experience. But a lot of my training came from training for hunting parties and being able to silently and stealthily and quickly move through very various terrains. And it was, you know, some of the most depraved and horrific experiences. And the people that are a part of this are all sexually sadistic predators. They view themselves as animalistic. This is a time for them where they can release their true instincts and their true spirit and be their true selves in all their depravity. And I don't view it as that.
Men? Is it mainly men, or is it men and women?
Yeah, in my case, it was all men. Yeah. It was awful. I also saw at this party children at the end, some children that survived that thought they were going to be kept alive, that had survived, ended up being killed. They bought out military grade weapons. This is intelligence officers, members of the ADF. It was my impression that they were from the ADF. Military grade weapons that they used to test and kill children right in front of me. So children that I thought had been saved, males and females, were then killed anyway. And that was especially heartbreaking to see because, you know, you think it's over and you think we're done. We're just going to be raped now. We're just going to be raped. And as a monarch, now you know is the time that you're going to be raped by, and it was members of federal parliament. As a monarch, they feel that you're somehow special and they get some extra special spiritual energy from raping you. And then they go on and kill other children right in front of you. And yes, it's really awful. It's really horrible. I understand that people don't believe this stuff happens. It's so disgusting. It's so evil. If you don't believe me, I just want to put it out there and say that's okay. You know, there's some things that defy human comprehension. We don't want to believe it's true. And if you can't believe it, then it's okay. And I understand. And I won't be annoyed.
Well, Ash, thank you for that.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Thanks for detailing that horror.
That's why I say thank you, because I can imagine to relive that just in your mind. Thank you. Is not easy, and it's very raw and very real. And guys, that share with us, there's no frills and whatever. This is Ash's experience as a monarch child in the Australian system. And I know I am extremely sad to hear this, and I know everyone else watching would be as well. So again, just thank you, Ash, for sharing with us.
No worries.
Is there anything a little bit more lighthearted we can talk about now, just to break that space?
Oh, I was going to go even deeper, but anyway.
Okay. Let's do it. Let's do it. There's nothing that quite like the present moment. Let's do it.
Yes. So, look, I know it's hard. It's a little bit scattered tonight, but I will go back to some of these ultra-based experiments that were done. And when I was, you know, a much younger child, I was actually involved in experiments and experimental parties, I would call them, that happened on the set of one of Australia's most well-loved TV shows. I won't detail that tonight, but I will. But maybe I'll detail it next time. It's not nice to bring up because people love the show. They love it. Even I partially loved watching it. It was very hilarious and funny. A great show, you know, in the 90s. And unfortunately, in the off hours, the set was used for experiments on children, MK Ultra experiments on children. And the show was a lot of, on the show, they had a lot of fun and they did a lot of fun things. There was a lot of comedic things that happened. But they used all of these props and these scenes to, you know, kill children. And I think that's very hard to take. And why I'm bringing this up is it's important to hear, but also speaks to the connectedness of the network. And if we look at children being raped, I was raped on the set of one of Australia's most well-loved TV shows by some of Australia's most well-loved, at the time, comedians and presenters, as well as being taken to at other points. And this is all child trafficking related. News rooms and news towers in Queensland. There's not many. Maybe revealing a little bit now. And raped by news readers, as well as politicians in these hunting parties, and politicians in these sex parties, I guess, that I've detailed, these ritualistic sex parties. And you look at my experience and the reason why this is done, and it's all for blackmail and the control of policy. So for politicians, this is the control of policy. We know this. Everybody knows this, right? Well, not everybody knows this, but it's widely understood and known that this is happening. But I'm just going to say from my own personal experience, I'm going to put it out there that it's true. So being raped by politicians and then me gathering further intelligence on these politicians, a politician cannot be fired for being involved in child trafficking. But if they will not move on a policy, the network will bring this up and use that against them and threaten them with it, threaten to expose it to people that they love and care about. So that's how that they will manipulate. And then a child like me will be used to gather other information that, you know, a politician's bitching to me that his wife is being, you know, not nice to him, and, you know, she ignores him and she's sleeping with somebody else down the street, one of the neighbors. Now, that's all information that then I can go back and tell the network handlers, and that's information that they could use potentially to release into the media to move that politician out of politics, for example, when the time comes when they want to do that, or to release that information to their wife, threaten to release that information, or to the public to get them to move on policy. Now, you've got news readers, of course, who are very important. Now, they're not so important anymore, in my opinion. Back in the day, potentially they could go off script if they wanted and say, oh, that's actually rubbish. I know the truth about this news story. If we're live, this is back in the day, obviously, back in the 90s. So then that blackmail is very, very important, shutting down that critical part of journalism where something could really go wrong, the face of the news as well. So we have this huge faith and trust in these news readers. We don't really know a thing about them, but it's the face of the news, this trustworthiness that we can believe what they're saying, and having them blackmailed and having information against them is just another form of control. And then we look at the entertainment industry, and I was only involved, again, I will say, a little bit within that, with some of Australia's most well-loved comedians and hosts, and the show as well. That's critical and really important, because what that does is it really creates this unbelievability. Yes, hunting parties are completely unbelievable. Will people ever really believe that they exist? Most people, probably not. That's okay. But the entertainment industry is crucial and critical in maintaining control and hiding child trafficking, because, it's like, we could believe that somebody is a pedophile. We could believe that they are a sexually sadistic pedophile. But could we believe that children are being raped and killed on one of Australia's most well-loved TV shows? We don't want to believe that. It's too awful to conceive. And what that does is it keeps us distracted. It keeps us laughing. And it really smooths out the horrors of what happens. And as a child, I would tune in and watch this show with my father, because, of course, he would make me watch it. And it was a form of re-traumatization. So all of us kids would be sitting and watching this show in our own homes, remembering what had happened. And it was like, no one will ever believe what you've been through, because everybody loves this show. Everybody loves these comedians. And it just solidifies to us that we won't be believed. And it's another method of control, but a crucial method of control. And so I would like people to understand that, the connectedness of it. And then, of course, we've got law enforcement personnel, which are heavily involved in child trafficking, and a range and a plethora of different projects, which I have detailed previously. I saw, and I reported this, homeless people, when areas are cleaned up, for, paving the way for the upper middle class, a lot of drug addicts and homeless people are murdered. And I witnessed their bodies being dumped in a local drain pipe. And that park, as I said, has finished a $3.4 million redevelopment, and there will never be justice for the lives that were taken. But law enforcement were dumping bodies in uniform at 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning, in the middle of the night. So they're crucial in this, because they're preventing due process. They are heavily involved, and they are blackmailed as well through this. And that just all leads to shutting down and silencing anybody that comes forward. And I think that it's so horrific and horrible to believe. We don't really believe that there would be such a level of cover-up. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, but there is. And, it's critical that we have... Yeah, sorry. I'm carrying on too much. I apologize. You go.
No, I'm absolutely... I'm intrigued, and I'm pretty sure our audience is as well. Australia is particularly hectic when it comes to this sort of stuff. Why do you think they chose Australia to move the Tavistock lab there, if you want to, for want of a better expression? Why do you think Australia was chosen?
Oh, look, I can't say for sure, but based on my experience, it's a perfect testing ground. We had a clean slate. We had people that were, predominantly immigrants and refugees, people that were brought over that were very low socioeconomic demographic, people that could easily be controlled and manipulated, people that could begin building these criminal networks from the get-go and exploit. And it was all based on exploitation. And we know that also, wiping out a huge part of our Indigenous history, which is, traumatic and sad. And that was also part of their testing. And I've heard it said multiple times. So to answer, I can't answer that question, and I apologize.
No, and it is more just your opinion anyway. So I think, and it makes sense, because I think a lot of, in Australia being so big and so vast, it can also just lose things. People just get lost. It's easy.
Absolutely.
I think, yeah, I find, and I really love your explanation and how you've connected the dots, like in terms of being raped at the TV, at their TV set, then how your father would do the further manipulation at home and force you to watch that program. This is so expertly done, isn't it? The way that the kids, that they've been able to take these kids and absolutely manipulate them and contort them into exactly what they want.
Correct. But to be clear, we are all individuals. We all are all human beings, and we all have that light within us that makes us beautifully wonderful ourselves. We are as unique as our fingerprint. That's what I always say. And we have this wonderful gift of being human. So for all their control and everything that they do, at the end of the day, they can only manipulate so much. And while they specifically used us for specific roles and specific jobs, at the end of the day, programming would not need to be continued in my daily home life and in my family life if that programming strictly worked. And while my father enjoyed doing what he did, the programming was continual for the purpose of keeping me under control. And my father really struggled with that. I've spoken about that in other interviews. But, I remember being 2 years of age on one occasion. I apologize. This interview is actually sort of sporadic. It's all sporadic. It's all over the place compared to my other interviews. Beautiful. But I'm just randomly connecting the dots here. And thank you. But, I remember one time he put the TV, this is back in the day when do you remember when the TV had the, it was like the grainy, when there was no channels on it? Yes. Yeah. So he turned that up really, really loud, and he just put my face up to it to test how long I could endure, the experience of it. And that was part of MK Ultra training, just to force a child to endure such pain and suffering to create that dissociative state, and also for his sexual pleasure. So they're trained in how to continue training of children, and it happens within the home. And he really did struggle with me. And I just got more and more defiant as time wore on. It was a nightmare. Now that I've been targeted for coming forward as a whistleblower, the team targeting me, the team comprised of one ASIO officer, one criminal operative, and then a team of further criminals that have been enlisted. And I've got a new contract on my head now, and I'll talk about that later, to rip my life to shreds. But I'll detail stipulations of the contract in a further interview. But what they did say to me was they're very, very proud of the fact that they feel that they have effectively silenced one of the quote-unquote greatest monarchs, to come forward. I don't really believe that about myself, whatever. I think that they're just tooting their own horn. But I think that that really speaks to their arrogance, and also my experiences within this program, and that whistleblowers and people that do have the courage to come forward, that are able to remember such things, they have said that I'm special, but actually I don't think I'm special at all. I think that I'm indicative of their failure. They failed to program me as a serial killer. They repeatedly failed to effectively traffic me and keep me under control time and time again, and effectively silence me. They, failed to get me to kill myself. They failed to reprogram me in the program that I was put into with my former psychologist, Tamara Smith, which I previously detailed. They failed time and time again, which is why I came forward. So it's not that I'm special. It's that these programs are not foolproof, and they can be broken free of.
I love that. I love what you've just said. These programs are not foolproof and they can be broken free of. Because I think, it's for us that have been oblivious to this sort of thing that has been going on. We realize that these kids that were being programmed and these super soldiers that were created and these children that have been weaponized to such an extreme, these aren't children anymore. These are now adults. And from what I'm hearing, and I'd like your opinion on this, a lot of these are actually these then children, now adults, are even unaware that they have been programmed, and they are set to be triggered now at this time. So they will have their programming start going off. What is your opinion on that? And what are the ramifications of that? What are we looking at here with this programming being set off with adults now?
Look, it really depends on the person and how they're able to break free. I know that for a lot of people, their purposes, it all depends on the stipulations of that contract. And to be clear, if you're deemed to be terminated by the age of 30, that's it. If you're going to be an asset for the next 80 years, then you can be triggered and programmed at any time to conduct an operation. But in that, you're not just going to be every child that is involved in child trafficking, that is a monarch, that had a specific job, that was raped by members of federal parliament and key players, and that they're worried about, they will always monitor them. They will always, everywhere you go, you're monitored, you're kept an eye on. And I know that in my case, I had no inclination of being a whistleblower, yet I was put into an MK Ultra program with my former psychologist.
I had to put that on there for you, Ash. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's all right. Thank you so much. That's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. I truly appreciate that. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And, they were worried about me at the age of 19 when they failed to effectively get me to kill myself. So, they put me into that reprogramming program. They attempted to, put me in psychiatric prison. And that was before I even dreamt of, I guess, coming forward. So that's the level of monitoring that goes on. And so you think that you're free, you think you've escaped, but you're always kept an eye on, depending on your level of threat. And, I was clearly deemed a very, very serious threat. They knew that, in all likelihood, I was going to remember these memories. But in terms of me being triggered to go then and now as a 33-year-old to go and do that job, they don't have any power over me anymore. That's impossible. It's just simply not going to happen.
At what age with you did they decide to stop? Like when they said, okay, well, this one won't comply. How old were you then?
Did they decide to stop what? I mean,
trying to get you to be a serial killer, because you were like turning you were then turning back on your handlers. At what age was that they realized that wasn't going to happen?
Oh, this was all very, very early on. So this was, your job is really determined at a very, very young age. They like to really develop this before the age of 5. Training can continue up to, say, the age of 8 or 9, absolute maximum. But at the end of the day, like, they will make those determinations on your role at a very young age.
Okay. So when that didn't work out for them, what did they try and push you in another direction then?
Yes.
And what specific direction was that?
Intelligence gathering.
Okay, so and that's when I just wanted to be sure I had that clear, because that's when, of course, your emotional intelligence was being harnessed, if you will. So then you could gather information,
train,
and
yes,
on things, on people, and pass it on to them. Yeah, wow,
reading people. Incredible. And I think that a lot of these. I think the other thing is that I don't know for sure, but like, it's very bizarre to me that a politician will go to a party and then accidentally detail things to a child.
Yeah.
I mean, are they aware that these children are being used to, like, against them? Or do they think, oh, I'm in this position of power and control. I'm so special. You know, I can say whatever I want to this child and they're going to forget.
Wow. Meanwhile,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what they've been told because I'm not them. But it's sort of an interesting thing to consider.
But one would think that they would know about these things, right? So, I mean, if that was me, I wouldn't open my mouth unless it was to drink champagne, right? You keep quiet. You know, so what I'm saying is, I mean, if
or
I know
children's
a kid,
blood, unfortunately.
yeah?
Yes.
Ooh, yeah, no, definitely. No, I wouldn't be doing that for sure. But it's insane to think that that is what they've been doing, and then this has been going on for so long, and then just wow, I want to just again say thank you for blowing the whistle. I know this is dangerous for you. There's not even a question, guys, that Ash is really putting himself out on a limb here, and I know this is something that you could get some serious backlash on. And again, thank you for that.
I have received.
We've hit our hour mark, but I would love to maybe have you just, sorry to interrupt you. I know my internet's wonky here. Just whatever else you still have to share for today. And of course, we're going to have you on again next week. So don't worry, viewers, there's lots still more to come. But is there anything you just want to still tell us today?
Unfortunately, I talk too much, guys. I apologize.
Fortunately,
I'm very blessed and lucky that I've put up with it so much. I do just want to say, I don't know what I would say. I would just say to, I guess maybe first and foremost to all the other whistleblowers that have come forward and that have bravely and courageously blown the whistle. You know, I'm really proud of you from the bottom of my heart. It's such an incredibly challenging thing to do that you've done. And to, you know, to the average person that's listening in that actually is receptive to this information, even if you're not receptive to all of it, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening, because some of this stuff is really gritty. It's really hard to believe, and you don't have to believe all of it. That's okay. You know, the main thing is that you have an open mind and that you're willing to engage in it, because at the end of the day, these programs continue in silence. They continue in ignorance, and that's their power. For example, even me, I had faith in our law enforcement services, and I went to Crime Stoppers, which is our anonymous confidential reporting system, and I thought I would be protected. That was my ignorance, and that's on me. And so if we understand how these systems operate, we understand, you know, that was the wrong decision that I made. That was a mistake. I should have gone to the media. I should have gone to the 7:30 report if they would have had me. That would have been the right decision to make. And I say that because I have been targeted. I've been tortured. I've been raped. A lot of things has happened to me over the past 2 years, which I won't get into now. But for coming forward. And I think that understanding as citizens and as normal average human beings how these programs operate actually dulls their power completely. They can't do it anymore. They only do what they can get away with. And they constantly say this. We only do what we can get away with. We only do what citizens allow. If citizens allow an innocent person to be tortured, then they do it. You know, and if more and more people come forward and blow the whistle on child trafficking and these programs, then it kind of breaks the programs, because how can you be programmed using ultra techniques and MK Ultra on a mass scale in the community and in general? And how can it be done to children? How can children be targeted through the Department of Child Safety if we know how these systems operate, how they work, and why they're functioning? So thank you so much for tuning in, because like the fact that you're listening and hopefully going away and talking about it with people and having the courage to have those discussions is actually all part of breaking free. You're not just supporting me. No one can protect me now. I'm buggered. But my message, and I hope that my message can live on through you guys, and it's really up to you guys now. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for having me on the show as always. You've been beautiful and wonderful, and you helping me get the best out of me and sharing my light through your light is just incredible, and thank you so much.
And I think Stephen says it quite there. And I say this to you, you're a modern day hero, definitely. You know, we look at people like yourself, Jesse Zabota, Tom Althouse, our countless overcomers that we've interviewed on this channel. And I remember, and I would just want to say this, I remember the first interview we had with you, and that must going back to maybe 6 months ago now, 8 months at the most, that we had our first interview with you. And I remember at that stage we pre-recorded because you were uncertain about what was going to, obviously getting your story out. And I guess there was all sorts of dangers and all sorts of things. And I just see how from where you were then to where you are now, saying, fuck it, let's do it. We're not actually holding back anymore. That is beautiful. And, I just love to see more and more people actually doing this. And as you say, every overcomer, every survivor who speaks up, it's like these little wild flowers just, opening up all over, all these little voices. They can't stop it. The more people who are speaking and the more people who are naming names, it's like trying to put out a bushfire with your hand. You're not going to be able to do it. You have to actually realize that your time is up. You've got to actually take responsibility for what you've done. I'm not one that's going to stand here with a sword and call for your head. That's between you and your creator, and that's your karma with whatever. You've got to take responsibility for your actions. I know one thing in my life. If there's one thing I know for sure, is that every action has a reaction. We cannot think we can do things like this to people, to children, to each other in such a vindictive way and not have our day that we have to answer. And that day comes for everybody, and we all have to pay the piper at some point. So I really want to just say to you, Ash, it's such a pleasure. I absolutely love chatting with you. I love your vibe. I love your energy. I love this beautiful spirit that you are and that you shine on despite some of the worst horrors any human being can ever imagine. So thank you again for what you're doing. Thank you for speaking up. We will see you hopefully next week, same time. I'll just arrange the time with Ash. Is that good though for you, Ash?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay. So what we'll do then, we will do our next interviews with Ash, which we're planning now on a weekly basis. It might be bi-weekly, but we'll see how it goes. Where Ash is going to just be talking about more and more stuff about what's happening. And has happened in this Australia that is such a beautiful country, but has so much horrors beneath the surfaces. And just to really be able to, also the 3 videos, Ash's 3 previous videos, I know Morné has loaded them in the chat here, but we're going to be reloading them onto Aquarius Rising Africa. So watch them from the beginning. You're going to get a lot of detail there, although there's going to be stuff that we obviously recover again. But it's really good to get the information and to get the foundation of who Ash is and what Ash has been through thus far. And from now, we're just going to be ripping the Band-Aids off, opening up those doors, and very happy to be doing it with you. That's for sure. So God bless you, Ash. Thank you so, so much, and take care of yourself. Mwah. And to all our beautiful viewers, thank you so much for your love, for your support. I don't think you guys realize how important you are to our interviewees who come onto the show and share their story. Just you guys supporting, encouraging, believing, and just allowing for people to have the space without judgment or condemnation. And, I have to say this now, and I'll say this again. Whether you believe, and I'm not referring to Ash now, I'm also talking about past people, whether you guys believe the stories or not, and whether you can say, well, this one is that, and look at that. I, for 1 second, do not have the arrogance to assume I know what a survivor went through. I do not assume for 1 second. I have the arrogance to assume I can understand how a survivor is going to respond emotionally to a situation that I've never, ever even come remotely close to in my life. So we have no right to decide whether what they are doing is right or wrong. Or if you have something negative in your heart and in your mind, rather just don't say it. Just stop following them. Don't criticize them. Don't judge them. Don't lash out at them. That's the worst thing you can do, is to try and silence these survivors. I work with some of them, and the minute they've spoken, they start getting panic attacks. And for hours, they can't breathe because it's almost like reliving the trauma. And then they've got to see shitty things about themselves on the comment section. No, not here. I'm not saying that any of you guys are doing it. I'm just saying that that's what also happens behind the scenes when we speak to people. And it doesn't matter whether they're a monarch or not. Don't think that because Ash is a monarch. Probably was worse for Ash and the hierarchy kids, I would imagine, because you kind of like were really taken to the brink of everything. But just always, I'm very, very protective, and I know Morné is as well, on this channel, of our survivors and overcomers. And we will block you. Okay? Not because we're nasty, we're protective. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Can I say something too, as well?
Sure.
Yes. I do appreciate all the support and the love that I've received from all the viewers. It's meant the world to me, so thank you so much. But I will also say, not on behalf of other survivors, but in behalf of myself, if you are questioning anything that I've said, that's okay. No worries at all. You're always welcome to just like hit me up on social and say, hey, can you explain this a little bit further? That's okay by me. I'm pretty open about this stuff. And I think questioning and using our cognitive awareness is really important. Not critiquing in a really harsh, mean, nasty way, but just using our brains and questioning what's going on. That's okay. But thank you.
I love that, because to ask questions and to get that response rather than to assume, we will often judge from our perspective, but then rather just to ask questions and say, I find it very hard to believe because that doesn't match up with that. In my mind, can you help me explain that? Whatever. Sometimes it might be a typo for all you know, right? But I'm just saying, just really good. And I love what you're saying. Let's start conversation. And I'm going to say, Ash, give it off air about this, and I'm going to put it out there. I want to say, let's even do some Zoom groups where let's say we have a group of people who can ask questions and that we do get a response from, where you can start talking about these things. I think, and rather than just being an audience, I want to see us getting a lot more interactive, engaging, and as you say, sharing the story, talking to people. These type of videos, video sounds like I'm back in 1983. These types of broadcasts, right, are the most important ones that people need to get out. So I know between Morné and Thea, they do a great job of putting shorts, like 5-minute clips, and we will be doing more of these, especially with these types of conversations, just to put little tidbits out there, that get people asking questions, because this is truly gruesome what we're hearing. It's gruesome. And as you say, as good human beings, most of us can't even imagine that this stuff goes on, let alone from your own family. It's absolutely gruesome. So enough now. I know I've said a lot today, but I really feel strong about this. And I'm very grateful that we're going to be having Ash on again next week, same time. Thank you, Scotty. Beam me up, Scotty. It's always good to see you there. When next, Scotty? You coming on soon. Love you guys. Take lots of care of yourselves. Cheers, Ash. Wonderful to have you. Bye.